Hey, how's it going, Joseph?
Excellent. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great.
Good. Cool. Are you actually in Oz
New Zealand.
or elsewhere? Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
I'm jealous. I've always wanted to go there. Maybe sometime soon.
I wouldn't be quite so jealous of the time zone.
So, what do you have in mind?
Well, what kind of sparked my interest in getting in touch with you was I read an article in Epoch Times where you talked about these consensus systems standing in opposition to hierarchical organization
Hmm.
and also the use of blockchains to facilitate real estate transactions. What are your views on
My view in a soundbite is universal disintermediation. Any sort of system that exists currently as a centralized system um, potentially has efficiencies, is potentially wonderful from the perspective of the people running it and benefiting from it, um, but it potentially has vulnerabilities as well. In that internally it can be corrupted by, say, a CTO or a CFO who wants to um, force their agenda on a company or a system, or potentially implement fraudulent billing practices. It can be co-opted or um, manipulated in various ways by governmental and quasi-governmental agencies. It can choose to engage in censorship, as PayPal has done a number of
yeah.
times with WikiLeaks, for example. Um, so um, there are good arguments for taking certain, and I would say that this applies to a lot of different systems, certain aspects of the businesses or just pure online businesses that are constructed in a centralized fashion now with a set of servers maintained by a set of human beings, and re-envision the architecture to be distributed on a blockchain and allow consensus-based mechanisms to operate the business logic. And so your cloud in that situation is the blockchain, and you actually have virtually no deployment cost because you're not paying for servers or anything. The security of the network and the processing power of the network and storage and bandwidth of the network are all provided by miners, and the system as a whole pays the miners to secure the network and provide those resources. So you name it, you can re-envision it. Insurance, financial products, banking, your own storing your own information. So instead of um, having an entity like Facebook monetize your personal identity and communications, you are more in control of your own information, and you can choose how and with whom to share information with great granularity. And if you want to monetize your own information, that's fine. You can choose to, in whatever ways will emerge, you can choose to sell pieces of your ID or reputation to appropriate buyers. I guess they would be advertisers in many cases. And there is no intermediating party taking a cut off of your ID. Same way with banking systems. There's no need to have a middleman, either forming pools of capital and making investment decisions, or just taking people's deposits and choosing to put them into highly leveraged instruments. Everybody will be able to, when the systems are built out, to control their own finances the same way they control their own ID.
To play devil's advocate, I'm wondering these intermediary parties, they form essentially a point of resistance that slows down the movement of resources, and in my view, maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but provide a bit of a buffer. And I'm
Yep.
wondering when we increase the liquidity and the ease of movement of these resources,
Yeah, fluidity. Sure.
fluidity, is that the word I'm looking for? What happens? It seems like you open the potential for some really rapid market movements and unforeseen consequences.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we have unforeseen consequences in slow and efficient markets too. Um, and so, yes, the future is unforeseen, but I would argue that rapid rebalancing mechanisms, um, uh, economy at the speed of light, basically, will be much less likely to get into the gross imbalances that we see in the current economy. And in our physical meat space world is massively unbalanced in many, many ways, and it's an unstable system that will probably that is in the process of a cascading collapse. Hopefully it'll be slow, but those things tend to go nonlinear at some point.
I completely agree with you there. That's entirely my gut feeling or instinctual view of what's going on, which is what sparked my personal interest in Ethereum and Bitcoin and all of these technologies. What I'm really trying to understand, though, in my own mind, is what this world governed by highly fluid transactions and highly fluid assets, what that will actually look like.
Well, it looks like this world compared to 100 years ago. Much more productive, much more efficient, much wealthier. You're providing people with faster feedback, better information, more information. And when people have all the information they need in a timely fashion, they tend to make good decisions for their own agendas. And if everybody's making positive, productive decisions for their own agendas, and there is information asymmetries in siloing of information, etc., then everybody wins. It's a set of interacting positive feedback loops.
To get from here to there, these things seem to tend to move in leaps. Some major event causes a shift to a certain point. At least that's how I envision this. I wonder what.
Well, I do agree that there are paradigm shifts, but every time you usher in a new paradigm, the old world doesn't die or transition abruptly. You still have people living the way they're comfortable living. The legacy banking system, legacy currency systems aren't going to go away. There will just be opportunities created by the newer systems, different ways of creating business models, different ways in which people can move money and identity, etc., around the world. And these new ways they're revolutionary in a sense, but they'll just carve out niches where they're cost effective or where they're more effective in terms of privacy or security, or they offer some functionality that's impossible in the legacy system. And it's going to move rapidly, I think, but it'll be a logical progression. It'll happen in layers. You've seen it with Bitcoin, basically. Consensus-based mechanisms were invented, and people marveled at the idea for a while and then tried to figure out ways to make it more usable. And then really trying to figure out ways to just put it in the background, and so people don't have to think about the mechanics of it and just think about what they want to do. I want to move some value between New York and Geneva. I don't care how it gets there, and leave that to the technologists and the business developers to figure out how to use this new technology. The user interfaces, the user experiences have to be elegant and compelling. It's one of the things we're really trying to focus on for Ethereum.
I guess the next big burning question that, or the next thing that really sparked my interest in that interview was the idea of consensus standing in opposition to rule by hierarchical authority.
Sure. So, a long time ago, we lived in small groups, and information was easy to get, really rapid, and if you were in a tribe or a small village, you could pretty much get a sense of everything that's going on all the time. Certainly, it wasn't perfectly instantaneous, but in a context like that, it was easy to form consensus and to govern by consensus. And certainly, there were They were hierarchies to some degree, but much less so than you find these days. As civilization expanded, we grew more geographically diversified, and information got siloed. Communication between different groups became expensive and slow. And so the appropriate organizing principle in a context like that is hierarchical top-down. That's how you distribute and acquire information and control most effectively. These days, and that sort of organization is really great if you are a major stakeholder or control it in some way. It's not necessarily as distributive or fair for all of the people in such a hierarchy. With the advent of the internet and especially blockchain technologies, we now have the ability to communicate very, very quickly, very, very inexpensively, and we have the ability to nearly instantaneously form consensus on issues in a way that's trustless. You don't have to believe somebody. You don't have to know them. And malicious actors can even be involved, and still you pretty much get a consensus. And so being able to apply those technologies or build on those technologies will enable a new organizing principle. So we certainly we're not going to leave hierarchies behind, but things will flatten very significantly, and things will become more consensus-based rather than top-down control-based.
And how do you envision this changing the day-to-day life? Is not the word it's not the phrase I'm really looking for, but how do you envision a change for the everyman? Our current institutions that we're familiar with, how do you see them evolving to adapting to a new paradigm?
So I think it'll come on reasonably slowly, and it will make sense at each step. People will take better control of their finances, more control of their finances. You're seeing that already as people use Bitcoin. As we build systems on top of Ethereum for distributed ID, reputation systems, etc., there will be a variety of really interesting offerings, some of which we can conceive of already and are working with people to design and build, and some of which we can't even fathom at this point. One of the principles of Ethereum is non-discrimination. So it doesn't matter where you lie on the political spectrum. It doesn't matter where you lie on the business spectrum. Ethereum will be available to you to use and build on, just the same way that anybody can use the internet and build on it. And Ethereum will be a nonpartisan platform controlled by a nonprofit foundation once we build it. In terms of interacting or relationship to the legacy world, we are going to do our best to build tools that will make it easier for existing organizations to build some operations on the blockchain. So entities might want to see their books become public and transparent and auditable on the blockchain. Entities like banks or other types of financial companies, insurance companies, hedge funds might want to issue instruments on the blockchain. Again, totally transparent. And those kinds of entities have very different requirements from let's say a publishing system or some sort of game on the network, and they will, if they need people's ID in the form of AML and KYC, then they can build that on the blockchain too. So it's up to different groups, and I'm aware of some pretty big players in different aspects of branding and financial industry, etc., who are really thinking about how to. It's very early days, and they're still trying to understand the technologies, but they're thinking about how it might improve some of their processes.
Would you be comfortable talking about these organizations that are interested in using
Nope.
blockchain? No, yeah, yeah. I figured there'd be a name drop if you were comfortable. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a bit early, and these are groups within different organizations that are dreamers and believers and philosophically in sync, and they will experience some resistance in their organizations. So we want to do everything we can to support them, and we want to do nothing to thwart them.
of course. I have another question that's completely on a different tack. I've been talking a lot to the guys at BitShares, and in a sense, I see cryptocurrency personally through the lens of their philosophy and their design philosophy, and they have been moving to a less and less distributed, more and more kind of structured decentralization for the sake of efficiency, including proof of stake as opposed to mining. And I know that Ethereum is intending to implement some kind of mining. Is this a consensus tool, or more a currency distribution
Issuance tool. Yeah,
yeah.
sure. Well, it certainly serves us both. Primarily, it's a consensus tool, but we do, as you're implying, it is really useful to think of them as different elements. And if one tool manages to accomplish both goals, then great. But you can certainly tease them apart and have, say, a proof of stake have nothing to do with a consensus mechanism or a processing mechanism, have nothing to do with issuing any currency. And so we've been working hard, thinking hard on the issue of building a hybrid proof of work, proof of stake system, because certainly efficiency is a big issue. And there's not a lot I can say concretely on that right now, because the ideas, there are a bunch of viable ideas that we've been working with, and we're just trying to figure out the costs and benefits of the different systems that we're kicking around. In terms of, yes, centralization to some degree has efficiency, and Ethereum 1.0 will be quite inefficient. We're going to build a system that has a great user interface, user experience, etc., has all the right components, will enable businesses to build out their business models and services on the system. There'll be a very elegant app store experience for the user, so they can do one-click installs in their user client, and their user client will really be a node on the network. So if they want to flip on mining, they can do that. Also, just the business models will be able to put together beautiful, elegant HTML, CSS, JavaScript interfaces. So that's version 1.0, and the inefficiency there lies across a few different dimensions. One, blockchain bloat. We're about 100 times more efficient than Bitcoin in terms of storage, but we're doing at least 100 times more things than Bitcoin can possibly do. And so we're trying to store programs on the blockchain also, but just in terms of transaction storage, we're much more efficient. And so blockchain bloat will be an issue for probably every successful system in this space. We're trying to, this is not so much an issue for Bitcoin, but our block time target is 1 minute, and we're trying to, if we're successful, we're going to be trying to jam a lot of computation into that 1 minute time frame. And of course, all miners store all information, and all miners process all transactions and execute all computations. So there's massive redundancy, possibly wasteful redundancy there. The way to take care of these situations is, in the short term, pricing mechanisms will take care of them. In 1.0, basically the price that a miner will accept for including this transaction and the associated computation in the next block will rise and rise if the resources are tight. So there's that pressure valve, and the problem with using that mechanism is that if we are very successful, it may turn viable businesses less economical. And so it could put a lot of difficult business pressure, let's say a year into the system, if it's getting very popular, could put a lot of pressure on different businesses that are operating fine until their costs increase. So we are in the process of forming a cryptocurrency research group. There are a number of luminaries. You can see some of them on our website from the fields of cryptography, cryptocurrency, economics, law, and we will be working closely with these different labs around the world to solve the difficult problems in cryptocurrency. And basically, we're going to need to invent sharding mechanisms that will enable efficiencies in storage and computation. So the way it will look is a subset of miners will process a subset of transactions, and a different subset of miners will verify a subset of transactions. And so you'll be able to distribute work more efficiently across the network while still ideally maintaining a single unified view of the network. And so there may be mechanisms in the way Ethereum is designed at a deep level that will enable us to regionalize our processing much better, and statistically, really, stochastically. And so it's not a centralization because probabilistically it works out that it's pretty distributed.
When you say distribute the load so that some miners perform the consensus work and others actually crunch the numbers, is this a multiple actor approach? Are there more than one type of miner, or is this load balancing? Does this load balancing take place within the system?
The load balancing wouldn't be centrally controlled, it would be economically controlled. So for instance, if it was really expensive, if there's a very simple, cheap way to process transaction A, because it only involves local information that you've already got, then you can choose to accept a lower fee for that transaction. If it involves information that will take 6 hops to get to you, then you may set a higher price, or you may just not be interested at all. You won't. I guess the higher price would indicate that you don't really have visibility on where that information is, and so you're going to have to get it. Whereas somewhere in a different part of this address space, there may be a miner who has all of that information pretty local, or most of the pieces that they need, and they can assign a lower cost to that operation, and they would effectively be the one who processes it and submits it to an overarching blockchain. But again, research problems. These are just pure speculations on my part.
Speaking of research, I interviewed a fellow, Nikos Bentonidis, recently, who was, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
He's part of our CCRG.
Oh, he is?
Research group, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. I've been looking at Next recently. Next is another project that I've been following quite closely. I found they have, what they've decided to do is to tackle blockchain bloat is implement multiple chains, multiple parallel chains. Is that something that Ethereum would look at doing?
Yeah, so as part of that sharding mechanism, you could imagine that there will be multiple chains operating simultaneously, and results will be coalesced into an overarching blockchain. And one of the so it's a research problem to figure out how to build applications where your business logic is operating on a cycle of once a minute, and only probabilistically too. So you can't even be guaranteed that you're going to get a result within a minute. Although, of course, you can raise your price, and if you offer enough to have this transaction processed, you're virtually guaranteed that it's going to be in the next block. And for lower priority items that you don't need done in the next block, maybe in the next week, then you can choose to pay a lower price. So that's a hard problem, how to write applications and put together caching systems that enable it to appear smooth from the user's perspective. In 2.0 or possibly 3.0, because it's a hard problem, we will certainly look to have many sub-blockchains going on that sort of operate in their own part of address space and can get information quickly and inexpensively. And those things, if you have 1,000 of those things, and you have in your overarching blockchain's target block time is 1 minute, then you can have these 1,000 little mini blockchain workers, and in that way you could actually get sub-second business logic processing. But again, let me emphasize, these are total speculations. Not going to be in Ethereum 1.0 and may not even make it into 2.0. But they're, conceptually it seems reasonable, but there's a huge amount of work to be done to build a scheme like that or something different and maybe better.
Could you mentioned sharding. I literally swing from trees for a living. I'm a complete layman. What do you mean by sharding?
It's a database technique for slicing up data sort of vertically in columns of a database, just for easier access. It can be used for different reasons. Easier, faster access, regionalizing data, and therefore speeding responses of systems. So you're basically taking a single unified system and slicing it up behind the scenes to operate more efficiently in one or more dimensions, while still, from the user's perspective, maintaining a single unified view.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense. One thing I noticed talking to the guys, or one of the fellows at Next, was that they didn't organize specifically. In fact, they were highly anarchic initially, and gradually these committees coalesced in order to solve specific problems. And they found that gradually, as with more and more actors working essentially without undirected, they managed to get a lot done and select the best, and the best stuff wound up being distributed and employed. It does, yeah. And Ethereum has this, I hesitate to use the word centralized because it seems like a bit of a four-letter word at the moment, but Ethereum has this core group that's organized together, and I'm wondering how you feel those two different models compare.
Well, I think we're almost exactly like Next. We are still a volunteer contributor project. We are open source. We formed spontaneously. We've added a little bit of organization and a lot of different project capability. We do have a group that's it's not a deep hierarchy, but we do have a group that's sort of an oversight group that's trying to make sure that all the different pieces happen: legal, secure storage of funds, development of the core infrastructure, maintenance of the website, communications, just a million different things that's required to build a big project like this. Bitcoin was an experiment. It was formed in a context in which nobody was watching, and it had time to evolve and grow and debug itself, and there was no pressure really. We are under enormous scrutiny, and we are building a fundamentally different kind of system. Bitcoin is a brilliant system for transmitting value and storing value, and I think it's going to remain the better or become the bedrock of the financial system, hopefully, for the planet. But we're different. We do have a token like Bitcoin. It's called Ether. But we are building a distributed application environment, and we are competing with other entities who have application environments, not necessarily distributed and consensus-based like ours. And so we need to be on top of the latest technologies, providing the best user interface and user experience. And we need to keep evolving too. So you do need to, we have a very, very much a bottom-up approach, but we do have, in a bottom-up way, we've developed a mechanism for sharing information and overseeing the different facets of the project. And yep, we need some organization to make this bigger and better.
Because at the end of the day, there are just some tasks that are better suited to to a central group as opposed to...
Exactly, and we really are just a bunch of disparate groups that talk to each other. The core, there are a couple different core software development groups. The web group, they're working on their own projects, and what we do share is an overarching goal, and that is to build Ethereum. It's a philosophy, and it's an application environment and hopefully ecosystem soon. And we're totally in sync on what that goal is. A lot of the time we're not so in sync on some of the sub goals, and we've been very good at getting together and forming consensus and moving forward on even some issues that have been contentious. But I'm pretty impressed with this group because they're respect all of them very much. Very smart group of people and very dedicated. And we care enough about the project and the vision to go through and into those difficult discussions and come to a better solution. And so far, it's worked.
You guys do seem highly cohesive, and it's interesting you use the word respect, because I know that certainly Ethereum is highly respected and highly scrutinized at the moment as being one of these holy grail projects.
Well, let me just say, stop you there. Our cohesiveness is an emergent property, and it emerges out of chaos, really. Inside there is a lot of different opinion, and we have been able to talk it out and stay coherent. And I'm glad that the world is seeing this project as being cohesive and coherent. Internally, it's very organic and dynamic.
As it should be.
Exactly, yeah. It's really quite natural the way you're describing next. So CS is quite similar.
Well, this is actually a ton of stuff for me to digest. I could keep talking to you forever. But for now, I think I'll leave it there. And
cool.
Do you mind if I...
Cool. Well, loved your approach. Happy to help any further if I can.
Yeah, hey, fantastic. Thanks a bunch, Joseph. I hope to talk to you again in the not too distant future.